everybody, I'm Factor and this is Irikanji. I'm a street artist and toy designer from Melbourne in Australia. I've decided that I'm going to make a series of videos which will be small tutorials. A lot of my friends and that are always asking me, how have you done that? What have you done? What do you use to do that? And as somebody that's really involved in enjoying the process of making designer toys, I decided that maybe I'd go through and share a little bit of what I do, how I make things, and try to kind of go through and section off all the different processes of the work that I do with making my own toys. When I first started out making toys, there were no resources. This was probably around 2016, 2017. I'd always wanted to make toys for a very long time. I had no idea how to sculpt. I had no idea about the process. I had no fucking idea about any of it. So the only way I could actually learn was through trial and error and watching a buttload of YouTube tutorials. And I probably watched every single YouTube tutorial that there was. And I'd watch an hour's worth of tutorial. It might have been like a little resin exercise and stuff, and there'd be like 10 seconds of something that was applicable to me in making toys. Nowadays, there's a whole bunch of resources for people on YouTube. There's a lot of designer toy makers that are sitting there sharing their processes in that. Craftsman he's amazing. I really wish that he had been around when I first started out, but unfortunately I spent a lot of money making a lot of mistakes over the years. Not everything has been perfect. I've had some absolute monumental failures along the way, and I'd like to just kind of share what I do with you guys so that maybe you don't spend as much money making so many fucking mistakes as I did, and I can kind of help guide you through it. I have no idea how long this whole tutorial process thing's going to take. I'll probably just keep going with it. Honestly, if I'm going to go from end to end, it's probably going to be like 40 or 50 episodes. So I decided for this first tutorial, where to start? You want to make some toys, you want to do some cool shit and that. Where you first start is have a passion for it. This is not something that you are going to make money from, really. This is a passion project. This is something that you're going to have to live and breathe. If you're highly successful or you manage to find something that everybody fucking loves, then yeah, sure, you can definitely make money out of it. You can definitely reach into the sky and become that and have massive fucking lines of people waiting for your toys and stuff. I'm definitely not at that stage right now. I'm just making toys for the pure passion of it. I used to do a lot of street art and stuff, and I still do, but these days for me, sitting in the studio by myself, sanding shit is quite possibly, that's what I want to do. It's just passion, pure passion. I have people that collect my work and stuff, but I don't know what people like or anything, so I just build and create for myself, really. And if somebody enjoys it, then that's the best thing about it. I could go on about this all day, but the main purpose of this tutorial is to introduce the most important thing that you need when you're starting out doing this, and that is tools. So you need tools, right? Like, you can't just do this without anything. I mean, you can. So the number one most important tool that you have are your fucking hands. So, what is the number one tool that I use when I'm making toys? Well, the number one tool that I use when I'm making toys is this. This is my scalpel. Some people call it an X-Acto knife. I never really called it an X-Acto knife. Maybe that was like an Americanism or something like that. I'm not sure. But I just call it a scalpel. This one, you know, once upon a time was really nice and ergonomic. Now it's a little, you know, fucked up, and you can see it's had a lot of use. Really simple. The blade goes in here. And why is this my number one tool? Well, this is my number one tool, and let's just do that, because I use it all the time. Like, alright, so I've got this little thing here that I'm just going to use for demonstration purposes. I use this for everything. I use this for cutting off pieces, like if I'm bashing something, or if I'm, you know, like taking something and trying to pull it out, if I'm looking at parts and I want to, you know, just do that. But I also use it for sculpting. Right. So this here, this little thing here, this is my number one tool. Personally, I don't think that you can make toys without this, but, you know, give it a go. Right, so what is my number two tool? It kind of varies, right? There's a lot of different, I mean, look, I have a whole fucking, like, container of tools. These are the tools that I don't use very often. Sometimes I'll use them, but I don't use them very often. Right? Second most important tool that I use are these. Right? These are just small, little tiny silicon tipped pieces. Right? Okay. So why silicon tip pieces, and why are these really important? Well, I'll go into materials a bit later, but a vast majority of the work that I do, I end up using a thing called epoxy sculpt. It's a two-part, and I already combined it. It's a two-part like epoxy clay. Okay, so the good thing about this stuff is that it goes rock hard and ends up being really, really rock hard. Okay, really, really simple. You take two pieces and you just blend them together. You're going to do this a little bit, okay, and you just knead it really, really quite a fair bit. So this is pretty well kneaded. Now, honestly, like, a lot of people will sit there and wait. This will set rock hard. Well, it'll set hard within an hour, okay? And I'll go more into materials in the next thing. When it's first done, it's really squishy. It's a little hard to sculpt with. Usually I'd leave it for maybe 5-10 minutes just to firm up a little bit, okay? But I'm trying to tell you why a silicon piece is really important, okay? So let's just take this little thing here. I don't know what this yellow shit is here, but I'm going to get rid of that right now, okay? And I'm just going to press this in because I want to get rid of that there. Okay, right. See, I should have really sanded this piece down first so that things stuck to it, right? Now, the silicon things are really great for moving epoxy around, epoxy sculpt, sorry. Okay, so you can see, you can just kind of press it down and all that. But see how it kind of like, it sometimes pulls bits off like that? Enter the third most important thing if you're using epoxy sculpt. Most important tool is a bowl of fucking water. Seriously, bowl of water. This is one of the most important things that I have in my studio next to me at all times, especially using epoxy sculpt and for sanding. And we'll get to sanding in a little bit, but for the purpose of this and the purpose of showing you these silicon tips, this stuff smooths out with water, right? So if we just, and I'll just show you here, if we just take a bit of water here and put it on the tip, get it a bit wet, and you smooth it out like this. You can actually smooth those edges right down, like right down. Smooth it all down, and the silicone tip gives you a nice like smooth surface that you can sit there and smooth it all down with. Fingers are also really good. Okay, I use my fingers all the time, hence why I said your hands are one of the most important tools that you could possibly fucking have. Yeah, right. But you know, this you can actually get it in and push it into like little slots and little bits and pieces and stuff like that, right? Okay, so silicone tips, these are great. Some people can make their own. I just bought them, right? Now you can see with the water that this has really quite smoothed out, and I've used this to push it down into the edges there. Cool. Next important tool, and I hadn't planned on showing this, paper fucking towel, man. Paper towel. Because technically this stuff is a little toxic. I mean, it's not going to kill you, but it's toxic. Wear gloves. I don't like to wear gloves, unfortunately. I just try to keep my hands quite clean. When you wear gloves, you lose the tactile nature of what you're doing. Okay. So we got silicone tips. We got a scalpel. What's the next most important thing and important tool that I use? There is no next most important tool, so I'll just go through a whole bunch of stuff, right? So you've got a lot of stuff like these, right? Okay. Originally these were dental tools, though I have no idea what a dentist would use this for. I really don't fucking know. Maybe like digging out a tooth or something, or hammering down on a molar, applying it down. I don't know. I use this one a fair bit because it's got a really good ability to shape. So let's just take a look here. We'll get some more of our epoxy sculpt. Okay, and we'll just, you know, you can use this just to cut off or anything like that. Let's take a look at this. See all that shitty stuff there. So back to our trusty scalpel. Let's just fuck this right off. Fuck off. Oh yeah, this is a mature channel. I will make no compunctions about swearing. This is Australia, man. It's part of our language. If you find swearing offensive, maybe you want to go to another channel. That's fine. But I will be swearing. Yeah, get rid of that fucking shit right there. Cool. Right. So I fucked that up a little bit. So let's just take a bit of water and fix that. Okay. So let's get rid of this shit here. So let's take some epoxy sculpt. And honestly, it's just by feel. I want to just smooth that out and get rid of all of that crap that was on the top of the head there. No, miss some, so let's just curl it over like that. Right, and this one I can use just to pull bits off. I try not to waste it. There's definitely a working time with epoxy sculpt. You got to be relatively quick and have a vague idea of what you're doing, which doesn't help me at all because I never have any idea what I'm doing. So I'm not one of these people that sits down and does drawings and plans out a toy and works out what's going to happen and where the pieces are going to go and all that kind of stuff. And if that's your deal, then that's fucking great. But you know, like the stuff that I paint on the walls, when I'm sculpting, I just make it up, man. Make it up as I go along. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I prefer just to be spontaneous about things and create spontaneously I don't like spending time on creating designs and all that kind of shit. If I was doing that, man, I'd be a designer. Oh wait, toy designer. I'm a toy artist. Right? So there's a little bit of plastic still up there, but it doesn't matter. So I was just showing you this tool. Sometimes I'll use this just to cut out and that. They all have double-ended bits, so there's like a little shovel piece there. I can just like get rid of that. I don't do a lot of texture, but if I wanted to do texture, I could be like, hey, I'm going to use this one, and I'm going to like draw lines and shit in there. But I'm not going to do that because I don't like that. I like smooth shit. That's not my thing. One day I'll do texture. And I do have some tools. This one is what I call a spear. It's good for stabbing things. No, I have no idea what that's useful for. Okay, so next tool. It's a spoon. I sometimes use this. It's good for, like, you know, doing edges and that, but usually with this is really helpful and useful if you're using Sculpey. It's a really good tool for Sculpey. But for epoxy sculpt, like, I don't need this to smooth things out. You can't really smooth epoxy Sculpey out very well with water. So you can, but it's not great. So I tend to use that for Sculpey, but I've stopped using a lot of Sculpey these days. So okay, next tool. It's like a bowl on the end, but it's got this nice flat piece here, right? So sometimes I'll use this for getting down on bits where I can't use a silicone tip. It can also do, like, you know, if you want to do grooves and things. So I'm hoping that you can see this. I did set up these cameras properly, right? You can like shape holes and poke things and all that kind of stuff, right? And that's kind of cool. Alright, so next tool is this. This is useful when you're working on a much larger scale, right? It's a typical kind of clay tool. When you're working on a larger scale and you want to like pull some bits off, you know, if you want to scrape some stuff off or something like that. It's also good for like digging holes. I generally use this tool a lot when I'm setting up the molds and stuff. So with the molds, I'll use a plasticine around the piece, and I'll show you that later. And I use this kind of to dig out and cut around the mold piece that I'm working on. Right. So there's a whole bunch of tools, right? Dental tools and stuff like that. What's the next thing? Next thing is a file. I have a little tiny file here. Little tiny file is really cool. Say if I just want to, you know, file off some edges on something, you know, or just deburr something, or get rid of like a little imperfection or something like that. I will use a little file. Quite handy to have. Don't use it all the time, but I do use it sometimes, and it's yeah, it's just a good little tool to have. Next tool I have is my cutter. I do, as you can see, use this a fair bit. It's really nice for, let's just okay, if you want to make some shapes and just cut pieces off, right? Yeah, it deforms them and shit like that, but I do a lot of sectioning and splitting of stuff like this. It's a little dirty, and I probably need to clean this one off. They're, you know, they're a dime a dozen. You can get them in those wooden sculpting kits and shit. I have a couple of them around, and this one probably needs to be cleaned a bit. So that's another tool there. So this is, you can see this has started to firm up a little bit more here. Next tool. I have these. These are my little tiny decal scissors. I got them because they're useful for cutting out little like water decals and things like that. But I've since found that I use these for a lot of stuff because they're quite small and narrow and sharp. They can be really useful for cutting off little tiny bits and pieces of things. Maybe not their intended purpose, but having a nice small little tiny pair of scissors can come in a lot of handy. Next tool, skewers. Right, wooden skewers. What do I use wooden skewers for? Well, I'll go into this a bit later, but skewers I use for moving around, but a lot of the time I use them for applying super glue. They're really helpful. I'll just pour out a little super glue or something on a little tiny palette and use it, and then use the super glue to kind of like go around edges, especially where I've attached things and I want to fill in gaps and things like that. You can get a lot more control using a skewer. You don't want to use a paintbrush, because the paintbrush, well, super glue will fuck it up, right? So you just take this and you put it in little corners and shit like that. Skewers are really, really handy to have on hand. Next item, cotton buds, especially these little things. So I got these from Metro Hobby here in Melbourne. These are really useful for when you spill a aforesaid super glue or something like that. So they're really good for like where you're doing adhesives and stuff like that. You can just kind of wipe them away, and obviously the cotton buds are useful for removing little bits and pieces and stuff like that as well. Okay. Next tool I have is a toothbrush, an old shitty toothbrush. Right. Why is this important? At this stage where you're doing your sculpting and stuff, it's not important. Where I use this is after I've actually cast my resin and stuff. If I've used a mold release, I will get some isopropyl alcohol. Fuck you, coronavirus, because now I cannot get any fucking isopropyl alcohol. And in fact, I have this much fucking left because everybody has taken it and is using it for hand sanitizer. And people that have a legitimate use for it, if you're not a doomsday prepper, then, you know, okay. So I actually use this for cleaning off my resin pieces and making sure that any mold release or anything like that is off it. I'll just rub it down with isopropyl and rub down the piece and make sure that it's really nice and clean. Next tool, I have this. It's a hacksaw, right? I keep showing it up here, but it's the wrong camera to be showing it. Hacksaws are really useful for fucking cutting shit. Okay, now it's just stuck. You get the point. If you're doing kit bashing and that kind of thing, well, you're gonna need a hacksaw, and you're gonna need to cut things apart. You're gonna need to do all kinds of stuff. So I'll get a bit more into this when we go into the materials. All right, tools that I have that I really want to use that I have not yet, because I'm not a texture guy. I'm a smooth, I like a lot of smooth pieces and stuff like that. But I got these really, really cool tools from AM Creature, which is an Etsy store. Right. Oh, let's just get rid of that. Okay. So, and these are actually apparently really useful for creating scales. I shouldn't put those there, so you can see my pile of tools. And apparently, what you do is you just do this, and then you make scales like that, and then you can smooth them out, and it'll do like a scale pattern on your toy, or on your sculpture, or I don't know, whatever you want to do. Like little tiny scales. It seems a little finicky, but it's actually really quite a cool tool. So I really want to use these. I just haven't had a toy yet that I've made that I can use it for. Alright, so the next important tool that I have is a toothbrush. But I've converted this electric toothbrush into a sanding tool. Right? So I'm just going to move this shit out of the way. And I'm a messy worker. I'm fine with it. I clean up every so often, but I am generally a little bit of a messy worker. That's fine. I know where everything is. So this is my electric sander. Right. Okay, really simple. I'll show you how to do this. Okay, take your electric toothbrush. Okay, cut all the bristles off one of these, one of the end pieces, right? And then just sand it down or whatever. You'll see there's a bristle piece, or I just got a bristle piece and I cut a piece of plastic and I put it over the top of it. So you just take some double-sided tape, right? Stick it down on the end like that. Take your scalpel and yeah, okay, I'll just do this normally. I don't know why I was doing it so weird. Let's just stab myself there. Okay, and cut that shit off, right? And then you've got that little square thing there. Okay, then you just take a bit of sandpaper. Okay, pull the second double side off, and then kind of just press it down on your sandpaper, and then cut your piece off. This is really fucking simple, man, but you know, it's a lifesaver. And then you just kind of shape the edges off like that. Sometimes I like to leave corners, because the corners of the sandpaper I can kind of, you know, dig into corners of the toy and shit like that, right? And there you have it. Now back to the water, right? Now the thing about resin and all that kind of stuff is that, yeah, it's toxic, but if you use water, you can mitigate that a lot, because you use the wet and dry method and the resin won't go everywhere, and you can tidy it up afterwards and there won't be dust. So if we're just sanding this down, for example, cheap, quick power sander, and it works really well. Right. You get into all the corners and shit, and sand it down. Works really well. See? We started sanding down and sanding off. Man, this thing saves me so much time, like sanding and shit. Yeah. The thing is that, you know, it doesn't have an infinite power supply. It is waterproof. This is a good thing. It's a waterproof sander, right? This isn't quite dry yet, so I'll just leave that to cure. Okay, so it's a waterproof sander. Really cool. Sometimes I'll have a couple of different grits for my sanding paper and all that kind of thing, you know, just so that I can swap things out and go down on that. Probably last, but not least, and it's a tool that I've only really just started using. I've never really used one before, but I have a Dremel. Yeah. I've started using it for drilling things and some kind of sanding. Woo! Yeah, it's probably poisonous, but you know, hey, you know, it is what it is. It's a Dremel. It's good for screwing holes and doing some like getting rid of bits and pieces and shit. I usually use my my scalpel for that, anyways. And last but not least, if you are using that, wear a mask. Yeah, wear a mask. Look, when you're sanding resin and stuff like that, doing wet and dry with sandpaper, it stops a lot of the dust, but there will be, and if the water kind of like evaporates, then it'll, yeah, it's not good for you. So wear a mask if you deem that there's going to be kind of like a lot of dust and shit like that. Okay, so look, those are primarily, and let's just throw all this in here. Primarily, those are the main tools that I use. So, those are the main tools that I use for when I'm sculpting and when I'm creating. Like, a lot of these tools have a different place in different parts of the process and stuff like that. But these are always in easy kind of like reach for me, all of these different things. So that's tools, and that's where I'll begin all of this. If you enjoyed this, please hit subscribe. It sounds weird saying that. Subscribe to my channel and follow me along, because this is only the very first thing that I've ever done. Yay. So weird talking to myself in my studio. And I'm sure I'll probably get better at this. This is not the greatest first video, but I'd love it if you subscribed and kind of followed along the journey, because I have a lot of stuff that I really want to share and show you and try to pass on all of my knowledge. I think the most important thing about making toys is to share all of your knowledge. Don't hold secrets, don't hold back. Be free with everything that you do, and share all of the mistakes, all of the successes and that, all of the techniques, all of the materials with everybody else out there, because the more people making toys out there, the better for all of us. And the more people will fall in love with toys from outside of the traditional, toy lovers. And I think that it's really important for us to take our knowledge and disseminate it to everybody that has a passion for doing these things. So thanks a lot, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Yeah, so I forgot the last most important tool that you have when making toys: beer. This channel is not for children. Bye. Oh fuck, that's good.